The following program is a production of KSPS Public Television and is made possible by the Friends of Seven.
I wanted to fly, I guess, from the first time I saw an airplane.
My mother said, "You can learn maybe. Maybe you can be a stewardess." And I said, "No, I want to drive it."
And I think flying is something that teaches women they can do these things on their own with no help. And it's good.
You know, it's just one of those life experiences where you're just, I can do anything. You know, nothing can stop me now.
There's another place I can go, there's another adventure I can have, and as long as that's there, I will always have that drive.
When you think of Amelia Earhart, you know, she is an inspiration, and you know, who doesn't want to be like her? I do.
Amelia Earhart, the most well-known woman aviator of her day and perhaps even today, but she wasn't the first and certainly not the only one. The first female licensed pilot on record is the French Baroness Raymond de la Roche in 1909. A year later, America's first is Harriet Quimby. She is also the first to fly across the English Channel. Bessie Coleman, the first black woman pilot, is barred from a pilot's license in the U.S. She gets one in France and returns to become a popular draw on the air show circuit. In these early days, aviation is a risky business. Many of the first women pilots lose their lives pushing the limits of primitive aircraft. But the allure of flight drives them to persevere. And by 1929, determined women all over the world are making their mark in aviation.
Dear licensed pilot, on talking it over among ourselves and the other pilots whom we already know personally, it seems that the women pilots in this country should have some sort of an organization.
That year, a letter goes out to every licensed woman pilot. 117 of them.
It need not be a tremendously official sort of an organization, just a way to get acquainted, to discuss the prospects for women pilots from both a sports and breadwinning point of view, and to tip each other off on what's going on in the industry.
99 women aviators from around the world, including Amelia Earhart, answered the invitation. At that first meeting on Long Island, they formed the first organization for women pilots, the 99s. Earhart is elected their first president. By the new century, they would have over 6,500 members throughout the world.
My obstacle was no one of the opposite sex believed that a woman could do those things. But I did them anyway.
Gladys Dawson Baroker is a Northwest aviation pioneer. At age 17, she spent every spare penny on flying lessons, 15 minutes at a time. She made her first solo in Ferndale, Washington in 1932. After all her work to get into an airplane, the next challenge was to jump out of one.
I talked to him and he said, "Well, we were really looking for a fella."
Gladys tried to convince a local barnstormer to include her in his act.
I said, "Well, don't you think a girl would be more of an attraction?" Oh, and he said, "Well, I don't know." He said, I'll talk it over with my partner. You come back this afternoon and I'll let you know." Well, I came back in the afternoon and he said, "Well, yeah, we decided if you agree to make 20 jumps, we'll take you along." And so I said, "Okay, that's fine with me." Well, to show you how stupid I am, I had never even seen a parachute.
Barnstorming brought the novelty of flight to the masses. Anyone could experience the thrill for a penny a pound. For the pilots, it was a sweet deal. Fly all day and still get paid. The trick was attracting passengers to the airfield. A woman parachuter was the perfect gimmick. and Gladys was a natural from the first.
When he said jump, I jumped. I pulled the ripcord. I didn't wait to 10 seconds like they told me to. And here it is dangling up here in my hand. The chute hasn't opened yet. So I reached back, and about that time it snapped open. That's just how fast things were happening. That was quite an experience. That first jump, I would have made 50 if I'd been able. I just loved it. It was something so peaceful.
On her 17th jump, Gladys injured her knee. Her parachuting career was over. It was on to wing walking and a 3-month motorcycle odyssey across North America. Gladys married her flight instructor, Herb Baroker, but it didn't mean settling down. She became the first woman instructor at a men's college in Lacey, Washington.
I had my first daughter while I was teaching at St. Martin's College, and I didn't miss any ground school training, and I don't think I missed much flight training.
It wasn't long before World War II changed the face of aviation. The West Coast was closed down to civilian flying, so Gladys and Herb bought an airfield in Coeur d'Alene. That's when she joined the 99s. The military recruited her to teach Army and Navy pilots, the only woman of 35 instructors.
I had more experience than many of the pilots, and some of them would even come to me to try to find out what their students were doing wrong, even ask me to fly with them. So I was well received in the aviation field.
Gladys trained over 1,000 military pilots and countless civilians for the next 50-some years. She continued to pilot anything that flew, including hot air balloons and gliders. Now in her 80s, she's grounded, but she keeps her hands in aviation by building parts for replica biplanes.
So for this and the many reasons that throughout the years, Gladys, that you have touched the people of North Idaho, the North Idaho Fair Board has chosen to honor you and the fair by naming the building the Gladys Baroker Building.
In 1997, Gladys was honored at the site of her former airfield, now the North Idaho Fairgrounds. It was an opportunity to share her newly published memoirs and remember old friends.
Especially some of the ones I've flown with, I think I might have made a difference in their life. I hope so.
Well, when I would come to the field, there were women pilots, and I was always so impressed with them that these women were out there flying. And I thought, I would really like to learn to do that. You know, they were an inspiration to me.
Gloria Sands is a Spokane pilot, an active member of the 99s, and Millie Shin's flying partner.
Well, I've been a part of the 99s since 1954, which puts me kind of antique.
Millie is an inspiration. Every time I fly, I learn something from her.
Oh. You always remember that.
Nobody discouraged me. My mother said, Shirley, sure, you can learn maybe. Maybe you can be a stewardess. And I said, no, I want to drive it.
Millie Berglund Shin, a Montana native, came of age just as flight matured from a glamorous novelty into a practical necessity.
The mass air attack on northern Europe dwarfs everything that has gone before.
Europe was in turmoil with World War II. Air combat and bomber runs were now essential to military success, and the U.S. scrambled to train the pilots it would need for war.
By day and night, the vital centers of the enemy's war machine are being pounded into impotence.
So I got a job at the airport and found out that that they had decided that for every 40 male, they'd have one female, and that's what they called us, a female.
Millie's acceptance into the military pilot training program didn't mean acceptance in the air, even from her first flight instructor.
He said, "You have no business letting you fly. I can wash you out in 6 hours." Well, he took me up and really sort of what they call wrapped the airplane. Did a lot of stalls and spins, and I guess he was intent he was going to make me sick. And I was so thrilled with it. It was just the way I thought it would be to fly and be up in the air and turning over and everything else. And pretty soon we came in and landed, and he said, "Well, now are you convinced you don't want to fly anymore?" I said, "No, it was just like I thought it was. That was great. Thank you." And I think he was pretty shocked.
With her training complete, Millie stayed on at the Billings Airport working for the Civil Aeronautics Administration. It wasn't long before the U.S. military called women pilots to duty. Millie was one of the first, but she had become too valuable at her Billings job. The government kept her there.
Hundreds of hours of free flying time was quite an enticement, where I was sitting at a desk running the office at $135 a month.
But that didn't keep Millie out of the air. She flew search and rescue missions throughout the Northwest.
I had a little trouble on this deciding to marry because I had been pretty independent during the war years and being able to fly.
Cheryl Shin, a fellow pilot, finally won over the reluctant Millie in 1946, presenting her with the ultimate engagement gift, a Fairchild PT-19 Army trainer.
And he had painted on the side of the front fuselage, Millie B, in black letters so everybody could see it. And he said, jumped out and he said, "There, now here's your airplane, Millie. Now will you marry me?" And within the week, of course, everybody in the state knew that Millie had an airplane. And I did eventually marry him that fall then.
The Shins had 3 kids, and aviation remained an important part of their family life. Millie was a charter member of the Montana 99s. Over the years, she continued her search and rescue missions.
Because I was a woman, I could maybe get away during the middle of the week, where the men couldn't get away from their jobs. So I was a housewife.
You want to take the controls for a minute and keep it at 35, and I'll take a look at the map. Okay, 35 is good.
Millie is a veteran team flyer. The 99s have a long tradition of women's cross-country air races. Millie flew in 2 derbies in the 60s.
But the big thing, we had to wear skirts, and you had to land and be sure that your plane propeller had stopped, for you cracked the door open and ran for the time clock and punched it, all in a skirt.
Okay, got the field. Let's ease her back. Good. Right on the line.
I get up there and I just completely relaxed, and I just dearly love it. I actually feel like a bird, I think. I've always felt that way.
I was in the midst of going through a divorce, and I decided to go ahead and do something for me. Is this too loud?
As a young mother, Jan Berdar has her hands full with little time for her passion of flying. But her commitment as president of the Intermountain 99s keeps her involved.
How can I stay current and fly and have these little children? And all of them had done that. And so I could see that here was a group that was going to support me and give me encouragement that they'd done it too.
Okay, I got the wheel, you got the power and the rudder, right? Yeah. We're going right down the center line this time, right? Yep.
Valita O'Day is a Coeur d'Alene flight instructor. On this day, her student is also her youngest son, Mark.
A little more right rudder, right foot, right hand. A little more right rudder. All the throttle you got. Balls to the wall. Hold it to the wall. Don't let it slip back. Okay. And we will be flying here. Pull it off. Okay, now you got it. Keep the nose right where it is.
Flying with a family has been a way of life for Velita that began when she was pregnant with her older son, Sky. After months of lessons, she was finally ready for her flight test.
I was extremely ready to have this baby, and the sun finally came out. I stood at the window, I watched the sun, and I went straight to the airport, and the flight examiner was available, and we did the check ride. He wrote out my license, and I left for the hospital and had my son 6 hours later.
After a divorce, she leased a small airport in California and began her career as a flight instructor.
But aviation was something I could do and keep my children with me. I had 2 airplanes of my own, and I had special children's seats installed in both of them.
Velita's son Sky practically grew up in an airplane. He even flew with her on one of her 3 transcontinental air races.
There are some crazy things that those people did on those races. Those 99s were interesting people. I can remember hearing stories about airplanes on these races that had dents in the leading edge of the wings, so they were flying so low they hit the cactus in Mexico.
Like mother, like son, Sky went on to get a degree in aeronautics.
And he contacted Cessna, and they said, well, they had enough engineers. So we fished out that old magazine, and he wrote them another letter. And he said, I visited you when I was small, and I got this degree so I could come to work for you. Now hire me. A week later, he got a response to come for an interview. And he worked for them for 2 years and loved it until Boeing called and offered him a great job flight testing the 777.
You know, my mom did a great job raising me, because she said, do whatever you want to do. And it was a great example to follow, because she wanted to fly, and she did that.
You won't know what to do when you get some smooth air.
I know, I'm scared.
You'll think the engine's quitting.
Really?
See, the wind is flowing like this over that wing. And if you keep raising that wing up, see, the wind is like this, and you keep raising that wing, you get to a point where the wind won't flow over it.
Jerry Sweeney is ready for her first flying lesson with Velita. The lesson is a gift from Jerry's friend Gloria to celebrate her 60th birthday.
I think having a zest for life, even when you turn 60, has got to be very important. And I thought there's nothing that gives you more zest for life than flying.
All right, you are flying, Jerry. Oh, it's wonderful. Wow, what a thrill. Is this fun? Oh, my God. Life begins at your age, you know. Wonderful, isn't it? Isn't it fabulous? Now, bring that wing back up. Just roll it the other way. Okay. You can do this. Push forward on this slightly. Forward on what? Push on the wheel. On the left wheel? Hand only. Right hand stays in your pocket. Okay. And that'll make your nose go down. Yeah. Like that.
I didn't realize that I would enjoy it so much. I always wanted to fly, but I didn't realize that I really would get bit by the fly bug.
Flying in the Powder Puff would just be an ultimate goal for me. It's kind of something that I think is not really there right now because it seems so far away, but yeah, I think it'd be great.
I started at a very, well, let's say middle age to fly, something that I never thought I would do, never thought I was capable of doing. And here I came, and as I told Cheryl, I thought I would be flying the pattern for the rest of my life, and here I fly across the United States.
Cheryl Cox and Ann Easterly are veteran cross-country air racers. In 1996, they were co-pilots in a 2,300-mile race from Arizona to Florida with 50 other teams.
But you got to know where to go through a mountain pass. You got to know where to get down low. You got to know when to go up high. And that's what racing is about, is where do you find the wins? Where do you do that?
Getting along with your partner is 3/4 of the flying. And if your navigator says do this, do it. Don't fight about it. And that's what we did. We just acceded to each other's demands.
There's an adrenaline rush, you're doing something that not very many people can do, or that not very many women do. And so just like wearing these necklaces that we have, only race contestants can wear these. And so they become really kind of a neat badge because they're just, it's a small club.
Cheryl recalls her first air race. After a tough day of flying, she and other pilots relaxed in the terminal building.
And we were all laughing and joking, and some men come in who had piloted another airplane, and what's going on in here? And somebody explained to him that we were transcontinental air racers and that we had just come from, and we mentioned a few of the stops and over the mountains and that kind of stuff. And he looked at some of those racers, and without a bit of irony, he said, they really shouldn't let you girls do that. So we just kind of turned around and grabbed another sandwich and went on about our business. But you kind of have to deal with that too. It's that there's a sense of people don't believe it, and you want to make them believe it.
We're going to inspect under the flap and make sure that they're still connected. We wouldn't want them to come off or anything. And then we're going to walk around the airplane.
Okay. Flying is also a field in which there's a perception that you have to have strong math skills and strong science skills. Well, that's true.
This and the combination of the propeller and the wings makes us able to take off.
Like most 99s, pilot Mary Werner dedicates some of her time to teaching young people about flight, like 10-year-old Jerome Abrahamson.
Then we have to check the other side? It teaches them a lot of lessons. Discipline, the discipline that's required to get up in the morning and go take your lesson, to be clear-headed about it, to not drink or use drugs, to study, to pay attention to what's going on. And it helps them, I think, to focus.
See the runway that we just left? Right over there? We're going back again.
Flying is physics. So for a young woman to have a sense that she's accomplished physics by flying is something that will give her confidence, perhaps, to go on and pursue any career or any other options in her life, whether she's a career woman or a domestic housewife. She still has that knowledge about herself that she can do it. We touched.
So I went down to the college and said, okay, sign me up, I want to be a pilot. And they signed me up, and then they proceeded to tell me everything that I'd have to do to actually get to be a pilot now that I'd signed up.
Captain Jill Luma is a pilot in the U.S. Air Force and a 99. When she's not flying KC-135 tankers, she likes to speak to kids. These are 8th graders in a Rathdrum, Idaho aviation class taught by Cheryl Cox.
The reason they choose me is mostly because it's to show kids that here's a girl who's done this. You know, a female who's gone out and attained her dream. And I think on that aspect, it's not as unreachable for kids. And I flew T-38s, which, how many people have seen Top Gun? That's a T-38 or an F-5. The T-38 is a trainer, 2-seater model of that plane. So I got to fly that, which was a kick in the pants. Goes Mach plus, so you actually get to break the speed of sound, which is kind of like gee whiz once you've done it, but it's just kind of neat to say you've done it kind of thing. This is actually what our job is, air refueling. We're like Texaco in the sky. That's what F-15C. Hoo, hoo, hoo. You have to do that. Whenever you hear an airplane, you're supposed to go hoo, hoo, hoo. That, and when you pull G's, you're supposed to go woohoo! You'll learn, you're young. Sounds like dorkiness and geekiness now, but when you do it, it's awesome. Military's not for everyone, but it has been the best experience I've ever, I've seen the entire world. I've done neat things, met great people, and I get to fly for free and get paid for it. I mean, how many people get to do that? So.
Amanda Haney is one of the few girls in the aviation class.
I have to learn more about the plane, but I know I could do it because I'm not dumb. I know I can learn it.
If someone wants to do it, and really loves flying, then I think they need to not listen to other people around them. I had so many people tell me, you can't be a pilot, you're a girl, you know, you can't do this, you're a girl. And my mom kept saying, you can do what you want to do. You don't listen to them. And meanwhile, she's probably sitting back there going, oh my God, what am I telling her to do? You have to ask questions or else I just sit up here and talk at you, and that's no fun. I hate that. So,
what plane would you like really want to fly?
if I had a choice to fly anything in the entire world, I'd want to fly the shuttle. If it's what you want to do, you have to go for it and not listen to other people. If they tell you no, you have to look at them and say, well, why can't I do it? What am I lacking that's not going to allow me to do this? And then go get it.
I really love the views. I've always liked being up and high and the challenge of it.
Flying is freedom, totally, because nobody is up there telling me what to do. If I want to do it, fine.
There's an enormous amount of self-confidence that you get because flying is a solo thing. You're there by yourself and no one's going to do it but you.
You land and you get out of this little plane, this little pink and white plane, and people say, oh, you fly a tri-pacer. And you're just very proud that you've learned to fly and you can talk to other people about it.
It's just really neat to be sitting around a room with a bunch of women and talking airplanes, you know, talking flying. You know, the smell of jet fuel. Oh yeah, everybody in the room. You know, jet fuel. You know, how many tea parties have you been to where women talk about jet fuel?
I think that's true for all of us when we get on an airplane, even if it's a commercial airplane and you're flying back to Minneapolis. If you have a window seat and you look out, you see the grandness of this world we live in. You get to see it from a whole different way. You're not stuck in traffic, you're not behind another car, you're just up there with the perspective that the angels have. You know, this is what Earth looks like.
I don't know, I just dearly love it. And I always say, well, I couldn't ride a bicycle, so I had to learn to fly.
How lucky we are that we live in an age like this. Oh, this is such a miracle. Isn't it something? I'm so glad I was not born in the good old days. Yeah. I'm a modern woman.